The following is a presentation of Tuning into Sci-Fi TV, the viewer's guide to genre television.
Hello, and welcome to the Small Council Matters podcast. I am Wendy Hembrock, and our maesters have gathered around the table to talk about A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, Episode 3, The Squire. So to get things started, we're going to take a turn around the table and have everyone introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. This is Jesse Jackson from Dallas, Texas, at Jesse Jackson DFW on social media. I am the Maester of Sunshine, Happiness, and very happy that there is a new Springsteen song to discuss, even though the reason he wrote it was very sad.
Hey, everybody, this is Shannon out in the Pacific Northwest, and hopefully that shield got painted before all the finger breaking started.
This is Christine Peruski, Mistress of Correction, and now we can talk about Bruno.
And I am Wendy, who tries to keep our maesters in line. It might be interesting today. Sounds like everybody's got some attitude with them as we gather. Just a reminder, we love to hear your ravens and comments about the show. Feel free to drop us a line on social media. We are at SCM_pod on X/Twitter. Or at Tuning Into Sci-Fi. You can also call us at 706-927-8478. Or you can come by our Discord channel specifically for George R. R. Martin television and talk to not just us, but a whole bunch of other cool listeners. So let's get into some news and information before we start talking about the episode in detail. Our show notes will have links to some news about the wider George R. R. Martin universe. House of the Dragon will be ending after season 4. It has been announced, which is kind of expected based on the story that's unfolded thus far. Also, we've got a story about what HBO plans for our Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Hint, looks like we're going to get things annually. And this show, part of the reason we'll be able to get things annually is because it has a reasonable budget and it has a dedicated filming location in Northern Ireland. We also got some backstory on Sir Arlen's weapon, and I'm not going to say any more about that. And we also have links to the HBO official videos for Inside the Episode for Season 3, which you might have also seen after the episode aired on HBO Max. And also they put together a making of series that they're calling A Knight in the Making, and this one is covering episodes 2 and 3. It was really fun to watch between the actors and the folks who are doing all the magic behind the scenes. If you read nothing else or look at nothing else, I would recommend that.
Yeah, I was glad to see that you have a plan. Famously Lost was kind of lost, pardon the pun, till they gave him an end date. I like the idea that the House of Dragon, we know we're going to wrap up in 2 more seasons. I'm also very happy to hear that this series, they're shooting to have it every year, probably because there's fewer episodes. They're not as long. I like the idea that, HBO's happy that it's a little cheaper show. It doesn't look cheap. I think, all the money is being spent on the screen. So I think that's kind of as someone, we're waiting, we wait forever between episodes. We can all remember the long gap between Sopranos. So if they can deliver where you get once a year this nice little series, that'd be a joy. So yeah, and I'm going to stay away from the member discussion, but I'll hold my pun for later, possibly.
So it's funny that Wendy said that's the one thing you can't miss, and that's the only one of our links I haven't watched yet. But I know what I'll be doing after we record. I've been looking for those, and I guess I must have missed it on the HBO Max menu. But I look forward to seeing that. I love those behind-the-scenes things, and I always relish those when I get a new Blu-ray set or something, or actually watch them streaming. I think even at the end of season 1, Ryan Condal had said, I think we've got about 4 stories or 4 seasons worth of stories. So Hot D ending then is not a surprise. And I'm glad they're going to take the time to get it done right. That's a big contrast between early Throne seasons, and Night of the Seven Kingdoms and Hot D. It's like the Dragons. That is so much money and work, and you're hopping so many locations. And a lot of that has to be recreated digitally, and just the post work on it is amazing. And as we talked about at the end of our podcast on Hot D Season 2, narratively, there's kind of one big thing that we were all anticipating happening, and then it didn't, and then the season just kind of ended. So they just couldn't get it done with no matter how much time and money you threw at it. So that's going to kick off season 3. And it's part of the reason here, I'm sure, I'm sure they used, digital work for the horse and some of the other things. But for the most part, everything is in camera, and there's real tents there, and they may extend the scene, but it's nowhere near the work they had to do in latter seasons of Thrones or in House of the Dragon all the time with everybody having a freaking dragon. I will say one thing about the thing about Sir Arlen. It was an article that they discussed with the prosthetics designer who discussed the prosthetic created for that opening scene. And they posted a Instagram from that prosthetics designer of the mold for said appliance. And if you go to their Instagram page, they've worked on House of the Dragon also. And there were some amazing shots in there of like King Aegon from House of the Dragon after his dragon crashed and he got burned. And there's just a lot of interesting things that they do. And if you were into how they make movie monsters and stuff like that, I would suggest that for a good look, despite the lead into it, shall we say.
Yeah, I wasn't going to, dig too much into that, prosthetic article. I was worried where it might take me. I'm not surprised that there was much discussion about it out there. I'd be surprised if there wasn't. I was mostly focused on, the filming schedule for Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I mean, House of the Dragon, I swear they are refiltering old news as if it was new. We have been told the 4-season thing like many times, I'm pretty sure. But I am not only happy to hear that they're planning on releasing this show annually, but they are already filming season 2. They started last month, which is great. I mean, it's amazing that they started filming season 2 before season 1 started airing. But hey, they've already got it all ordered, so who cares, right? It's all coming out whether we watch it or not. Which is great for everybody involved. Steady paycheck, guaranteed. Awesome. And I gotta add Northern Ireland to my vacation bucket list. I love to go to filming locations to be like, look, this is where they did this thing. And I'm here too. Woohoo! It's always fun to do that. So Northern Ireland is a new hit on my list.
Yeah, I thought it was actually really interesting, the whole comments about Northern Ireland and the continuity of the people there working on this 3rd series, that they were actually very disappointed that House of the Dragon did kind of go all over the world, because it did impact the tourism coming to Ireland. So hopefully that will all be a positive for Northern Ireland. It's certainly a positive for HBO's bottom line. The cost in the episodes is vastly less for Night of the Seven Kingdoms. One, you're talking about almost half the running time per episode. But as Shannon mentioned, all the visual effects for the dragons and stuff. Hey, those puppets are pretty cool. I don't feel like I've been cheated by seeing some fun, DIY effects during the plays and stuff like that. I did want to add one little comment about Sir Arlen, because I think it was the writer of the episode said the reason that they gave him his endowment was because he was such a sad kind of a character who didn't have anything special about him. And it was the writer's theory that, because of his, I will call anaconda, as Shannon referred to it, that actually gave him an advantage at why he could be a knight until he was 60 and stay alive, if not be successful.
Does anybody else have a baby got back stuck in their head?
Yeah. It's like in The Jerk when they told him that was his special purpose. One other thing about the ratings, I don't know if it was that article, Wendy, or another one I read this morning, but one of the interview with Casey Bloys said that it looks like Night of the Seven Kingdoms is getting around 8 million viewers per episode. We saw where last week we said one debuted at 6.7. So they must be figuring like multiple day play. And they compared that to Hot D, which was averaging over 17. So it's a hit by HBO standards and doing well. They've already renewed it for, multiple seasons. But it's not the breakaway hit that Thrones or House of the Dragon is in terms of total viewers.
But I also think they've done certainly less from a media perspective and advertising. I mean, there's only 2 lead characters really, and they haven't really been rolling them out because, one, they're not named characters like House of the Dragon has. So it seems like they're taking a more modest approach to everything, which means that their viewer numbers are probably just fine given, what they've put into it. I'm sure there's some break-even point math that they're doing behind the scenes about effort versus outcome. One thing I did want to remind folks is that the next episode of Game of Thrones actually comes out on Friday. Because of the Super Bowl weekend, it's coming out early. So that's some fun to look forward to.
And as we keep going on, Heated Rivalry is averaging 9 million viewers. So that's getting huge buzz. The other thing I thought was worth mentioning when we talked about Ireland, Vince Gilligan from Breaking Bad and other shows that he uses the same crew there in New Mexico. And that has helped him, he says, because he knows them, the crew knows him, and they're able to creatively work together as a team. So maybe this will help that with this show as well, that you have some of the same people working in Ireland.
Yeah, you develop a kind of shorthand with people you work with all the time. It's kind of like if anybody played the board game Taboo, where you're supposed to figure out what the word is without saying it, or a list of taboo words. I find that if you play with someone you've known for a really long time, you have a weird shorthand that makes no sense to anybody else except this one person. And that's kind of the rapport you get going when you work with the same crew all the time. And you don't have to keep saying how you like things. They already know. They've done this before. They've been there. So it's definitely, it makes things run smoother. It's why you see a lot of directors work with the same actors, same composers. I'm thinking Tim Burton, Johnny Depp, Danny Elfman, they're a team, you know, because they work well together. They know what each other likes. So it's great to keep the team together.
It is. Though sometimes you have to bring in a new coach and a new OC and a new DC.
Sorry, Wendy.
Sorry. If you know, you know. I did want to shout out to one of our original supporters, Pat Sponigal, who reached out to me on Blue Sky to just let everybody know that he's really enjoying listening to the Small Council talk about some stuff. And also to reinforce that the Hedge Knight novellas came out well before A Knight's Tale. And he was loving the fact that we all have embraced Lionel Baratheon. So thank you, Pat, for the comments. We appreciate them. So now let's head on into the details and discuss this episode in more details and thoughts. We're going to start with Jesse offering up some quick review thoughts first.
This is the best episode so far. I felt like we're doing less world building. Got lots of Duncan and Egg, discussions. We were talking before we hit record, right? That there's such tasty discussions all the way around. So yeah, I really, really love this one. I was not aware of the big reveal, though I had kind of suspected it based on clues and everything. So this was really strong for me, a really strong ending. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure, when we get in the details. But I'm going to give this 9 out of 10 tasty breakfast sandwiches.
Oh, indeed, Jesse. Those look tremendous. Like you guys, I thought this was a terrific episode. More of everything that we love. Charming. This was the one for me that we got more insight into the Dunk and Egg relationship. We saw them kind of go at each other a little bit with sarcasm, and there were like cute moments and learning moments, and then all leading up to a big reveal at the end. The action, what we had of it, looked terrific. Funny and charming. The music was on point again. Some really beautiful scenes, especially at the beginning, in terms of cinematography. I keep saying this, an overall delight. I give it, 9.3 out of 10.
This was, a packed episode for me. I got the jaw-dropping moment that I was looking for. I mean, I knew the reveal. It was obvious to me from the beginning, but the way they did it was just so chef's kiss. And, the music and the cutting, right at that moment, it was in theme with the vibe of this show. And, even though we still haven't got, Dunk, jousting, I'm starting to think we're going to wait until the last episode for that. That's going to be like the big climax. We finally get to see him joust. That would be really cool. Or whatever they're going to do. Just to actually see him in action, because right now he's just all talk. And there was so much of the bonding between Dunk and Egg, which I said from the beginning is what I'm looking for. I wanted to see their relationship together. And it really blossomed in this episode. I don't even mind that we haven't seen them jousting yet. This is what I was hoping for in this show, and I'm glad we finally got to it. I'm good with this. 10 out of 10 raunchy songs.
Alice, the three-fingered girl.
Even Egg's song.
So I really liked this egg-centric episode leading up to the big reveal that Egg is Aegon Targaryen. We spent the whole episode building the Dunk and Egg connection, and Dunk even promises that Egg will be his squire if he wins. And then to end with Dunk knocked on his butt in this fight. And then, the knockout stunner is the reveal when Egg intervenes and we realize who he is. I am going to give this 9 out of 10 dragon puppet flames. So let's talk about some highlights and details. I'm thinking we're going to have a lot to touch on. Let's start with you, Jesse.
So I think we've talked about this in the past, that behind the scenes, you pull back the curtain, we rotate who gets to go first. So everyone gets a chance of picking the juicy scene. But I'm going to pick just the discussion about Alice. And here's why. That would be like us doing a thesis on There Was a Man from Nantucket. And they take it so seriously. They have such a wonderful discussion. It shows a lot of their personality. Like maybe this is, why would they change her name then? Like if she was so talented, that's kind of a dishonor to her for changing the names. Well, maybe Alice is just a better name for a song. Oh, could be. But you have a lowly station. You take a skill and you build it up and you become something. That's something to be proud of. I just love the discussion. I love the banter back and forth. We got to see them picking at each other. But I think all of us have had a friend where you debate and argue minutia, whether it's comic books or a TV show or a coworker, and you just spend all this time doing this. This shows how they're brothers, how they're bonding, and who thinks that let's take a naughty song and let's show these guys bonding over it. So all of this is wonderful. I could have picked tons of different things, but I wasn't sure if we'd get a chance to talk, Three-Fingered Alice. So I said, okay, I've got to try to do that.
I love that choice, Jesse. That's great. And as you mentioned, what an unusual spur to great character moments between the both of them. And what I loved was, Ed can have such a great deadpan delivery. My favorite line reading of his in this episode was when Egg explains that he won't be joining the list today because that's for highborn knights and who to offer challenges. And then he's like, well, why have I been vomiting all day? And Egg goes, it's a mystery. It was just so funny the way he delivered that. And along those lines, I love the way he did the analysis to the song. He wasn't commenting on the ribald nature of it and whatever. He was like, maybe it was a source of pride. It's a story of somebody who picks themselves up and uses the gifts that they have to elevate their station. And, it was so funny. I had to watch that again after he said it, and their reactions were perfectly in character. That was such a nice moment there.
Jesse, I was discussing this with my boyfriend earlier. This scene is you. Not the one you would pick. You would be the one to dissect a song with gravitas, no matter how inappropriate the song may be. This scene made me think of you, and I am so glad you picked it because it just makes me know I do know you. I've been talking with you on the podcast for so long. I know you so well. And thank you for picking it because, I've actually been part of wacky discussions like this where you take a ridiculous subject and discuss it way too in depth. Wait a minute. Isn't that what we're doing here? That's what a podcast is all about. It's talking about an entertainment, a TV show, and talking about the seriousness of it. But I did really love this bonding moment between these two. It shows that Egg is much more mature than his age, which I actually expect out of royalty, especially Targaryen with older brother like he has. There's a lot of trauma that goes on there, and so you get an idea of how grown up Egg is, and what an intelligent person he is to take a subject like this and turn it on its head and look at it a different way. It was wonderful. There was a lot of fun moments between these two, and this one definitely stood out among the rest. You know, like, because the rest of them were they were very brotherly and fun or educational. This one was like, let's be wise men for a moment. It was just a wonderful moment. Definitely couldn't have happened after this episode, now that Dunk knows who Egg is. I think it'll take some time for them to get back to this level of rapport after what we saw at the end. Very good choice, Jesse.
Yeah, this is a great choice. Everything about this scene, because when it starts, we're again on Lionel Baratheon, partying it up. And as we, pan back through this tent, these two are there, but they're not partying it up. They're like, we're here, but we don't really belong here. And then they start nerding out on this song. And I loved the seriousness with Egg asks, do you think her name was actually Alice? And Dunk is like, no, I think that's a great name to put in a song. And at one point I was really thinking that Egg was pondering the idea of legacy when he was talking about Alice, and if he was transferring that onto his own family and their rather tarnished legacy at this point. They're on this PR tour to be in this tourney in the first place. The other thing that was nice about this was they're so different in age, and yet we've all been talking about the maturity level, in which Egg is probably more mature than Dunk. He's certainly less naive than Dunk is, because Egg immediately recognizes that the Targaryen deliberately speared the horse. And, Dunk is like, oh, he's too low, and, that was an accident. And Egg's like, no, I know that. So this was a great choice, because I think, as Christine said, we're not going to be able to have this kind of connection between the two of them again very soon because of this reveal we've had about who Egg really is. So that's a good one. And it leaves the door wide open for other choices from Shannon.
I think I'm going to zig where you might expect me to zag here. I am going to choose the Egg and Thunder scene. I just loved that so much. It took what could have been kind of schmaltzy and too treacly, but it was fun. And it's like at first he was trying to get the horse to do what he wanted, and Thunder wasn't having it. And then they slowly build rapport and trust. And then you see it kind of come alive, and then you see the horse galloping faster, and you see Egg running with the lance and twirling the sword around. And then eventually it becomes one of like mutual joy for both the horse and our little Squire. And the setup to it, the shot where they're walking along, there's a river in the background and they're kind of walking along, and it's like it's sunrise. The cinematography there was stunning. The music had more of that madrigal feel, but yet also had some pep when they started speeding up the pace and the briskness of the training. And then after it's over, you see him, patting Thunder on the head and brushing the horse and doing whatever. And I think it also, once you know the ending, it serves as a sad counterpoint to maybe we don't know if things are going to be like that again, because he didn't want to be the person speaking in those stentorious tones and speaking like a young princeling. He wanted to be the guy discovering the joys of being a squire, and training that horse and all the joy that they both experienced in that moment. And now he's thrust back into the real world where he has to live with the implications of his identity, and his knight is in some serious trouble right now. So I think it was such an innocent and heartwarming little scene. And I love the way it was executed by the actor, by the horse, by the cinematographer, music, everything. Tremendous scene.
Interesting choice, Shannon. All hail the animal trainers, because they were pulling out all the stops this episode. I mean, they had that horse nodding to the kid like he was agreeing with him. I was like, whoa, how do you get a horse to nod? That's impressive. I was confused at first what Egg was trying to get him to do. I was like, why is he expecting this horse to run when there's no rider to direct him to move? And then I was also very impressed that he got not only the horse to run, but to continue to come back. I'm like, I wouldn't trust my dog, who's 18 years old, to be off leash anywhere but our yard. And here he is letting the horse run back and forth. Is there just no way out of this little field? How is he doing that? But he was very good with the horse, and very polite to the horse, having an intelligent conversation. It is very different from how Dunk treated the horses. Just like, oh, I could sell you, but, that wouldn't get me very far. And he's like, I imagine you're much like a man. You don't want to be told what to do. So how about we make a deal? It was a very fun scene, and also got a little, I guess we'll call it a cameo of what was his name? Sir Robin Reisling, the guy with the eye patch.
One eye.
Yeah, one eye. It was an interesting way to introduce that character. I suspect he'll be coming up again next episode. That's just my guess. But that you don't just throw in a character like that to be weird and creepy and then never use them again. So I expect to see him again. It was a very interesting scene, him deciding to train before Dunk got up. And, Shannon, you mentioned that, he didn't want to be, the noble. He, wants to be the squire. He also mentions at another time in the episode that, he wouldn't mind, living in a place like that, being in a place like that. He talked about being a farmer and planting wheat and peas and raising, goats or something like that. Not lambs, though. Not lambs. I don't want to talk about it. It's just proof that he's happy with the simple life and probably just doesn't ever want to go back to that home anymore. He obviously hates his older brother a lot. Maybe we'll talk about that later. But, this was a very surprising scene. Just unique and nice.
Well, this is not the choice I would have thought you would have taken, Shannon, but it's a great choice. The Squire is practicing, and we talk a lot about how Dunk is not a knight. Well, Egg is no Squire either. And we got to see him, working with that horse, and I agree, whoever's training the horse is doing a bang-up job. But contrast how he deals with the horse to how Dunk did. Dunk is just empathizing with another being when he engages with the horse. He talks to the horse, his own horse, the white horse, like it's his friend and confidant. And then when the Targaryen and I think it was the pilot, the brother gives the horse to him thinking he is the stable boy, he immediately treats it with respect. And Dunk is, I would say, more theoretical and pragmatic. He's not engaging emotionally until we get to the point of, we want to do our duty and have pride in what we're doing. And that's both him and the horse, wanting to show up big for our duty and responsibility. And I don't know how they did it, but it did feel like the horse was having fun, enjoying running around. It was like a a dog wagging its tail, chasing a stick, with Egg. And, the interesting thing that they do in this story with Egg is he'll make these very, mature adult comments, like when he's talking about, my father says that, horses are stupid, and he's like, but I don't believe that. And he's, you couldn't guess his age, but then you'll see him again and he's like, this is just a little kid. And he is, just overjoyed with the simplest things. So, this was great. And then I loved how when, the one-eyed knight arrives, he knows exactly who that guy is, which surprises him. He's also very curious about his hair, which was another clue for us. And he's very, stubborn about, well, just wait until you go up against Sir Duncan, we'll be seeing you, again, he's kind of trash talking a little bit. So, he got his confidence up by going out and doing this practicing too, which was great.
I almost picked this one, so I'm so glad you did. I realize that Targaryens communicate with dragons, but maybe there's just a little bit of horse, sensing on there, because they seem to connect a little. I thought that was lovely. I was confused at first because the sword was on the horse. And I'm like, why is he taking the sword? No way. Egg's not leaving him. And so then once he starts talking and he, and he's expressing his fears of himself, right? And we're going to both have to do this. Will I be able to do this? And the idea that he's waking up early and working on this while Duncan's sleeping, is just truly a beautiful scene. And I'm going to echo what you guys said. At first the horse doesn't want to do this, and then all of a sudden he's getting into it. And there is that sense of joy. And no matter how unconfident Egg is in front of someone else, he's putting on a brave face. My knight's tall enough for both of us. What about my hair? What about your eye? And just this putting on this whole feeling of confidence, even though we know he is concerned about that. And watching him, practice with the lance and doing that is just a really beautiful scene that, and we've done multiple of these with horses, and I'll be the fourth one. The animal trainers on this, the horses have been beautiful. They've really shined, and this was just a great scene, and I'm glad you picked it.
I just want to add one little comment. If folks do watch the behind the scenes making of, it includes a segment where they talk about building the whole joust area, and the primary element that went into that was making it something comfortable for the horses to run up and down on. So that was just a great indicator of how much thought and planning goes into all of these shows. It was really cool. Okay, Christine, you going to throw us a curveball too?
No, I'm going to go straight for the meat. Let's talk about Bruno. For those who don't understand, I've been joking that, we don't talk about Bruno because we weren't allowed to talk about who Egg was. We were going to wait until the show revealed it. Finally, it is time. All is revealed. Egg is Prince Aegon. If you remember back in Game of Thrones, Maester Aemon, who is his little brother, had talked about his brother Egg And I believe the last thing he said before he died was, "Egg, I dreamed I was old." So that always stuck in my mind when we talked about Dunk and Egg, so I already knew from the start who Egg was. And also Prince Aegon was missing. So it seemed very obvious to me. And now that we know this, I thought back to my original speculation about whether or not he was actually meant to be the stable boy at that inn. I'm thinking now he actually showed up at the inn with his brother Daeron, who we saw inside. And he just wandered out into the stable. Probably the stable boy had run off. And he was just there when Dunk showed up. And he decided, what the heck? And they probably were at that inn for way too long. They were probably supposed to be going on to the joust. And his older brother didn't want to leave. He said he had had enough of that inn. So now we know what that's all about. I found it very interesting earlier in the episode before the reveal. He was shouting to Sir Humphrey to kill Aeron. He wasn't just doing it in that sportsy, like, kill him! He seemed very, very serious about it. And I have to wonder, how bad does a person have to be for a 10-year-old to wish death on his brother? The same kind of bad that invents curb stomping before there were curbs. It was awful. So this scene got out of hand really fast. I had to, unfortunately, rewind many times to see exactly what was going on with Tansel, because I noticed he had his blade out. He was pulling his blade out, but he snapped her finger. It was very clear that he snapped her finger, and I'm like, what, is he cutting it too? He was using it as a fulcrum to snap her finger, which is just a special level of douche. Everything about this man just makes me want to beat him in the face. Hey, and then Dunk showed up and did that. That made me really happy. And I knew there was no way Dunk was getting out of this without some sort of noble intervention. That you do not beat up the crown prince in front of everybody and just get away with it. And so of course Egg comes in. There's no way Egg was not going to stop this from happening. This was his friend. He really cares about him, and there was two options: reveal who I am, or let Dunk get killed. And the look on Dunk's face was the perfect episode ender. I don't know if he was more shocked or betrayed. And then they did this wacky thing with like operatic music, and they kept cutting to all the different people and the looks on their faces. It almost felt like a telenovela. But it somehow was really in theme with the humor of this show. A very serious scene, and they added this dash of humor with music and editing. This was just like the greatest way to end an episode. This is the we pushed a kid out the window ender. Perfect. This was like the whole episode for me. I loved it.
Yeah, I think you're right. It did have the same impact as the end of the pilot of Game of Thrones in terms of the character moments that are going to be propelled because of this. In this whole scene, Dunk is doing what a knight should do. He's trying to stop a wrong and protect an innocent person. And then Egg does what a noble should do, which is assert his authority on behalf of people who don't have any power, to his own detriment, right? Because he was off on his happy holiday talking about how he could live there forever and he could be a squire. And, the fairy tale kind of ends in this moment for both of them. The thing that will be interesting to see is how this table reversal plays out in their relationship. I talked before about how Dunk is kind of the most naive guy in the room. And in this moment, he might really be hurt and feel betrayed. It'll be very interesting to see how these two grapple with each other and explain what's been happening, and be able to go forward. And it was beautifully played and shot, because the other thing that was very notable to me was Dunk is, like 4 guys can't hold him back. And, he's super powerful up until the moment where they're about to like bash his entire head into a step. And then when Egg arrives, this is the tallest, biggest we've ever seen this character. He's like a peacock that completely opened all his feathers up. The tone of his voice, the way he projects, he grew up right in front of our eyes, in some ways. So this is a great choice. I really thought they knocked this part out of the park.
Yeah, I'm going to do 2 culture references. The first is, I think one of the scenes that affected me the most as when I watched the original Superman with Christopher Reeve is the scene where he is in Lois's apartment, and while she's talking, he becomes Superman. And then, even though he's in the Clark Kent garb, and then he becomes Clark again, just by his physical presence. And I feel like Dexter Soul Ansel did that, where he's, as you said, he's taller now. He has a command in his voice that we have not heard. And the other culture is when Field of Dreams and the James Earl Jones, or the doctor, the Burt Lancaster doctor, right? He's a young ball player, and the girl's choking, and he has to leave the field and become old again to save the little girl's life. And they go, and and there's this, you can't go back, and he doesn't even think about it for a moment. And so, Egg doesn't even think about this in a moment. He's his friend. He's going to do this. And so I just think that's a beautiful, beautiful scene. And he also, right, like he knew his voice, and then by calling the guards by the name, because they're like, oh, wait. And, and if they do this, they'll answer to my father. And yes, I am worried that we're now going to go to the Hallmark trope of, oh, you betrayed me, and why did you lie to me? Look, it worked out for you, okay? Let it go. But I'm sure that's going to happen. But I love that scene. I watched it 2 or 3 times. I was like, oh, wow, what a way to end. What a way to end. And that was just beautiful.
Yeah, you guys have made a lot of great comments about the scene. The one thing I wanted to echo was what Christine said about the music. We had that Ren Fair magically music throughout much of it, but at the end it kind of ramped up. It was almost like a Knives Out or Agatha Christie kind of, it had a little bit of wit and insouciance and humor in the melody, and then you did the quick pans to all the faces like you would when the detective names the killer. It kind of played in a little bit different genre there, which I thought was a bold but very effective choice. And ending on Dunk's face like that, a mix of like, oh my God, I just got saved. Oh my God, I got betrayed. And somebody's already probably put one of these together, but I'd love to see a supercut. Like, I don't think Egg ever really lied to Dunk about who he was. He always turned the question back around on him. Like in this episode when they were talking about their mothers, and then he's like, what happened to yours? Are you an orphan, sir? Or would ask where you came from. It's like, You know,
He
he
asked
gave
if he ever knew his father.
King's Landing, and he just assumes it's
right,
Fleabottom.
exactly. You know, there's a lot of them where he just dances around the truth. So I thought it was very skillful. And as I talked about the joy we saw in his face in the scene I picked when he stepped up the end, Jesse, you mentioned the Chris Reeve Superman thing. That's what he did. He kind of changed his bearing and his demeanor and the delivery of his lines and the tone of his voice. And you could see, like, he hated leaving his little fantasy world as a squire, but he felt he had to, not only because it's the right thing to do, but to save Dunk's life, you know. So it was just beautifully played all around. A great way to end the midpoint of the season. I'm sad to say that, but we've got 3 more, and a really, really effective scene. And I'm glad it's out in the open so we can all talk about Aegon.
Well, I was surprised at the timing, and as you all were talking, I was thinking that it literally was a dun 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 that comes in those kind of suspense situations. Yeah, I guess it was actually perfect to come at that halfway point. So I'm gonna maybe pick an unusual choice as well. I'm actually gonna pick the conversations that the Fossaway Squire has with Dunk and Egg first, and then when he and Dunk actually sit down and enjoy the cider, because, you know, initially he invites them for cider, and you can tell that Egg is worried that this guy is going to recognize him, right? He's looking away. He's like, we need to go to the puppet thing, and I'm going to go do that, so I'll bring your sword back. And he can't get away fast enough. And Dunk is not noticing any of that. And he doesn't want to go, but he also realizes he kind of needs to, because he needs some intel to be a better knight. And then when he's talking to Fossaway, I loved how he just goes through this litany of horrible things that the Targaryens have done. And, you know, Dunk, again, we get this naivete. He's like, do you think that a knight would really, you know, stab the guy's horse? And he's like, of course he would. He's a Targaryen. Look at, you know, and then he lists all these horrible things. And even he realizes he's working himself into a lather of anger. He's like, oh, you know, maybe I've said more than I should have, eventually. But, I loved that moment because it again sort of sets Dunk amongst this whole world and how he really is a naive in it. And, you know, maybe he'll always be that way. It's a little bit of the Ned Stark, you know, element of, you know, wanting to believe in the knightly virtues, and as a result, isn't quick enough to see the danger around him.
I also really like this scene. Great choice, Wendy. It is just, you know, Duncan's just listening with wide eyes, and this guy is just going on, and he is on a roll. Maybe he's had a little cider already, talking about it, and this false bravery, right? That in the tent, not in front of everyone, talking big talk about how these royals are just doing wrong by all of us, and this is. And, you know, Duncan does not have a lot of experience in that, and has really, you know, Duncan's thoughts are, you know, he and, you know, Sir Arwen were just trying to stay dry and keep food in their bellies. So politics is not something he's going to worry about. Yeah, I think it's nice. It also kind of sets the message that Dunk has a way that people like him. And so I like that, the bonding of that like they're enjoying that. I did notice that, Egg's immediately, and I think partly Egg really does love the puppet show, right? He loves that. So it's happy to go. And it's just a perfect, well written that for multiple reasons, Duncan's not there. And to have this where he then later has to go. So really well done. And yeah, we are speculating, right, what's going to come first, because none of us have read the novella. And, based on the previews, Duncan's going to need some friends. So we'll see what happens.
I love the fact that a knight and a squire who have an apple sigil really enjoy their cider. I think that works perfectly. Yeah, he's been likable since we saw him, that character. And, even if Egg was worried about the recognition, and Egg might actually agree with him, it was probably for the best that he wasn't there to hear, Raymond's, long, vulgar, off-color diatribe, about the Targaryens. Now, what he said wasn't exactly untrue either, and I think it was a bit of an eye-opener for Dunk hearing it, because he's like, that guy was a knight. A knight wouldn't do that. And it's like, oh, our sweet summer child. You have many things to learn, especially about Targaryens. So it was a good character building scene for both of them, and really well acted by both of them. And I just love those little human moments in different pockets of the whole campground where they do that. Oh, and one thing earlier when we were talking about the scene with Arian, he's also a bad art critic, because that was a tale of a knight killing a dragon from the Age of Heroes, which is like when the Andals came, before Aegon, before any Targaryens and all that. So it wasn't killing a Targaryen dragon, but I guess he didn't know his history or missed that point. So they, in addition to being, horse killers and incestuous, they're also bad art critics.
That is a interesting point. I didn't think we had enough of that puppet play to know what story that was, but you are really good at your lore. I do like Sir Raymond. He has been sprinkled through all 3 of these episodes so far, building a friendship with Dunk. And I feel like this is going to come in clutch later on. We're going to keep seeing him. And his rant was just so genuine. It didn't feel like he was acting at that point. He felt like a guy in the lunchroom during break at work, just complaining up a storm about the management. It was just so venomous and real. And he's giving us a good feel of the people and how the people are feeling about the Targaryens. I mean, this show is focused on Dunk and Egg, these little experiences that they have, but they've woven a grand tapestry in the background. And we've been mentioning the Targaryen PR tour, which really went sideways earlier in the episode. And now they give us Sir Raymond explaining the reaction that the crowd had at the joust. So it's really well done how they put this stuff together. They do these little scenes, we have Dunk and Egg at the joust so we can see them enjoying the joust, but there's, some brutality going on, but we're not going to explain it there. But we're going to have Dunk sit down for a drink with a guy a little closer to his age and, have an adult conversation. Ironically, considering the adult conversation that went on earlier with the kid. But it's just a more real way that people find out what's going on in the world. They don't have news shows. They don't have social media. He can see the crowd going angry, and he didn't even understand what was happening. He thought that the horse was killed by accident. I mean, that's our guy right there. It's so sweet of him to think that was an accident. But here he is sitting down with someone who knows better, and he's just sharing a drink with them. And he's getting the scoop, the real skinny on this guy. And as much as I really want the show to just be about Dunk and Egg and their relationship, I do actually want to see where this one goes, because they really seem to have a good rapport.
Yeah, I think the scene is really important, is how it builds on what we saw before, because during the joust, in the first run, when the older Targaryen, he veers away from the lance, and the crowd boos him for doing that as a coward, craven. And then in the second run, they obviously know that that's a foul, and people start throwing rocks at him, and Dunk senses, things are going sideways, right? The Kingsguard comes out to hold back part of the crowd. The other house comes back to hold the crowd. And that's when he's like, I think we need to go. I know it's getting a little bit salty
Smart
around
kid.
here. Yeah. And I hope that our Squire friend, turns out to be helpful in the clutch as we need it going forward. So what about additional highlights?
So I thought
Got any?
I thought we'd spend a little time, their day at the fair, right? The buying the goose eggs, then they're going and visiting. I think I couldn't tell if that was big sausage or like sugar cane. I couldn't tell what it was, but they're sitting there eating, they're going through there, they get their fortune told. I mean, they're just having a gay time. And then, right, they're luckily, they always get front row seats. I don't know. And if I was behind Duncan, I'd be like, no, you should be in the back. Like, I can't see over you. But then them mocking each other, oh, I can't see this, was just, I know we talked about it, it's just sweet and lovely. They're back and forth. So we've always said, at least, as we discuss this, those two relationships, those two people back and forth, great chemistry, and is what we come to this show for. And we got tons of that this episode. And it is going to be curious next week and onward how they get back, and can they ever get back to this kind of friendship again because of the circumstances.
Yeah, the scene when they were imitating each other was just adorable. It's like, and I won't even drink any ale. And he's like, it's disgusting. They were so cute there. Like, I love that. And then there was also a crowd shot when they were watching the jousting, and it was the two of them and this other guy along a rail raising their hands and cheering and whatever. And then when one guy went down, they kind of high-fived or embraced, and then Dunk turned to the guy to his left and hugged him after kind of looking at him. And then he offered him some of whatever he was drinking, and Dunk executes a perfect spit take. I thought that was just a delightful little comic moment. And another comic moment during that was Baelor's face. During the whole proceedings, he was like kind of proud but nervous that a Targaryen was in the joust. And then after he stabbed the horse and started acting like an a-hole, you got various, of him doing the face palm and rolling his eyes. And it's like, look, we're doing this for good PR. Okay. That's why we're in this backwater tournament and showing up with our banners and everything. And now we got to deal with this. Yeah. It was just great, wordless acting, by Bertie Carvel there.
Yeah, I loved the sarcastic banter at the joust. It's disgusting. I agree, kid. Same. Ale is disgusting. I believe they were eating sausages, when they were walking through the fair. I don't think they had, I don't think sugarcane's a thing you eat raw. God, I hope not. Oh, the cavities. I will, dive in a little bit on the predictions. Reminder, she predicted that Dunk will know great success and be richer than a Lannister, which actually surprised me. I know where he ends up, but it just doesn't seem like a lot of money is involved with that job. So, I hope we get more on that in these stories. Definitely not this season, obviously, but I want to know how that comes to pass. Then to Egg, she said, "You shall be king," and I'm like, yeah, we know. Even though they hadn't told us yet, I was like, yeah, I know that. But I realized I don't really know my Targaryen history, because she also said he would die in a hot fire, and all who know him shall rejoice in his dying. And it just seemed off character for him. And we were speculating before we started recording that she meant the other Targaryens, who, as we've seen, they can be real bastards. Some of them actual bastards. And that might be what she's referring to. It just seems to me, if all who know him are rejoicing in his dying, is that like know him even the littlest bit? Do all the people not like him? Is it just that we've gotten to a point by the time he dies that Westeros is done with the Targaryen legacy, and even though he is probably a good king, they're happy to see him go, because he's probably going to be the last strong king that they had. I don't know. All speculation on my part, because I kind of stopped doing my Targaryen deep dive up to the point of House of the Dragons, because I didn't want to spoil myself. But all of the conversations between Dunk and Egg were wonderful. I even liked at the beginning, when he was teaching him how to sew a patch on. And, you know, how do you get him so even? Oh, it's just practice. And, I mean, that's really what it is. You just have to work at it, which is something we see that Egg is good at. Just wonderful character work in this episode.
Yeah, the whole A Day at the Fair was lovely. The part that I really enjoyed was when they actually shot the breakfast cooking scene. One, duck eggs are amazingly delightful to eat.
Goose eggs.
They were goose?
Oh yeah, very large.
Yeah, no, I like duck eggs better than goose. Goose are too much. But, it was funny to see, Dunk trying to communicate. He didn't want him to behead the goose. He wanted the eggs, and then he has that crazy moment where he's holding the eggs and trying to talk to the pretty girl, and he can't get the words out, and she's like, "Yeah, I'll see you later, got your shield." But then when they're actually cooking together, you know, there's no dialogue, and I love that they did whistling as the sound over that whole minute or so, because it very much was, you know, these two guys on the road, very buddy moment, and they're both obviously starving, because that actually looked like the most delicious food they've probably eaten in a long time. Certainly that Dunk has, if he's normally excuse me, on the salt hard meat and diet. So yeah, that's a great choice, and it's very bittersweet once we get the reveal at the end of the episode.
And I think we've said none of us have read the novella, but if George writes like he does all his other tales, there were probably about 32 pages devoted to the description of that sandwich. It looked great.
Other highlights? Anyone else? We didn't actually talk about the joust itself. Again, every time I watch these, I fear for the actual horses, and they're doing a great job of not cueing where the special effects are. I was genuinely grimacing with everything that happened in the joust itself. And I was also giving huge props for the costuming. The elder Targaryen's helmet and all of the armor that was on his horse. He was very menacing. The opponent had great armor, very much more subdued, but it was also interesting when he went to pick his opponent, and the first place he went to was his cousin, which I think is Baylor's son, right? And he's like, "Oh, cousin, I'm not here to make you a fool today." And he kind of went down the row to find his opponent. I thought that was also really interesting element of the joust.
I thought of the guy, the blacksmith, right, that says, I don't do any fancy armor. I just do solid work. And I thought of that. He would not be impressed with all that. I really loved the jousting because so far we've seen it, and it was at night, and it was, we thought it might, we were talking about maybe an opening ceremony, and it was very artistically done with via candlelight or torchlight. This was very open. I was like, you can't have a stunt horse, right? I guess you can, but it was very scary to see that, and it looked incredibly real. And then the matter of fact, the guy coming out, and there was someone recently told the story that they were at a rodeo, and a bull ended up breaking its neck, and all of a sudden, immediately, lights were out, and clowns were everywhere. There was a spotlight where clowns, and the guy says, everyone's watching the clowns, and I'm watching. In the shadows, you could see that there's very quickly a cover and, something done. And I thought, that this very matter of fact, okay, well, got to take care of the horse. It was like, ugh.
Yeah, one little bit of trivia about that. I read an article with the actor who portrayed Arian this morning, and they were talking about the armor and the helmets and such. And it was like they let him sit on the horse and kind of do the introductions or when it's just kind of trotting. But for the actual jousts, it was a stunt person, obviously, but they had to use some digital trickery there because that helmet, as it was designed, you couldn't really see out of it. So they had to cover up what was in real life a bigger hole so the stunt man could actually see out of it.
I do want to bring up a scene we haven't talked about, or a couple of scenes we haven't talked about. That's probably not going to come up again later on in the show. The attempt to get Dunk to be the winner in a throne match. It was kind of surprising to me to see this, especially to come to Dunk of all people. So this joust is costing the area too much money, apparently. Pageant for his daughter. And they've devised a way to get some money back through betting by having a particular night throw the match and have Dunk, of all people, a very long shot, probably really high odds, probably 50-1 on Dunk. So they bet on him, and they know he'll win because the other guy has agreed to throw the match. It's surprising to me that they even went to him, because all you need to do is ensure that the other guy will lose, and he's already agreed to do that. So why would Dunk not do his best anyway? It put him in a weird quandary. It's like, you want me to win a match that I'm going to win. I think the only way to get out of it is to not fight that man. So, and he actually does struggle with it. He went to talk to Sir Raymond about it. I think I'm a good match for this guy. It's clear that he's struggling with this decision, wants some money, probably wants to actually win, because he's really worried about losing. He sees all these really good knights and he's wondering, can I actually do this? It's definitely, I don't know which way he would have gone, but it's pretty clear to me that this is not going to be a choice after the ending of this episode. I wonder what everybody else thinks. Do we think he would have taken the deal, or do you think he would have done the right thing?
Well, based on his comments about, whether or not the lance to the horse was deliberate or not, tells me he would try to figure out how not to take the bribe. Because that seems to be thematically his thing. He's trying to find his honor. He thought he understood what that was through his relationship with Sir Arlen, but now he maybe has to redefine that for himself a little bit. So I agree. I don't understand why the guy actually explained to him anything other than, dude, this is the guy you're going to go against. And that's it. He didn't need to explain anything else. So I'm wondering if that actually happened in the novella, or we did that to really make it obvious to the audience what might be happening. I'll be curious to see who does end up being the patsy in the future, though.
I think he had to reach to Duncan because Duncan probably would not have chose that night to joust. And if the person, maybe there would have been a lot of why then, like Apollo Creed letting Rocky, why would you pick an underdog? So maybe that was why it had to be involved. But you could just as easy, hey, I'm going to give this person a try. I don't think Duncan, I'm sure he's tempted. I think all of us would be, but I think it's going to be, he wanted to do this the right way and to do it. But it was an interesting twist that you thought that's where the story is going to go. And then, nope, we got a whole nother issue now.
Yeah, I was a little perplexed by that when I saw it. And to the point you guys already made, it's like, it doesn't seem like he needed to tell him, if for any other reason only to make sure Dunk chooses him. And I guess the reason they wanted to make sure that it was Dunk, as we've said, it's like the longest of long shots. Nobody knows who he was. They have no record of his fighting before. So there's nothing to have a track record to bet on. So they would probably get the greatest odds there, so they can make the most money to pay off the debt. And then maybe it was also the game master's assumption that Dunk has a little bit more of a flexible morality like some of the other knights there, because he's new and he's desperate and he wants to keep his armor and all that, and thought he would just nod and be happy for a victory. But after that initial encounter with him, it seems like maybe he thought, I think he judged Dunk wrong to think that he would even want to go along with it, because I think Dunk has consistently shown his honor and from moment one. So I'm curious to see where that goes, if anywhere.
Yeah. It definitely made me think of modern day sports as well. I was like, are we going to have a parlay come up in a future episode? Or not. Any other highlights folks want to note? Okay, well, with that, I think we are going to wrap things up for tonight. Well, actually, I should offer, is there any other dings or any other questions before we wrap up?
So I was going to bring that up, that I think partly because this is such a streamlined 30-minute show that we have not ran into many dings. I mean, we joked about the diarrhea, and this time we did not see as much with the throwing up. So this is a very well written show, and so it is very hard to find a ding, and not that we have to, but it's consistently really well told stories.
I agree. I think that less is more in this case. You have a slim story and they're sticking to it and they're doing some interesting things to build out the world and create character moments. And it's been very well paced. so far. I know some people have complained that the episodes are very short, but I think they're actually just right.
I think I would want the whole season to drop at once. Because they are short and it's well-paced, I think this would be a great binge season. It's basically going to be like a long movie or a miniseries that came out in like 2 movie-length parts. But yeah, I like they're jam-packed full of good content over really quickly and leaving me wanting a lot more. And I know there's more to be had. It's a whole week away, and I want them faster. That's all.
I do think they'll be really satisfying to watch as that one really long movie once the whole episode of the season comes out, which is something else to look forward to. Okay, well, with that, I think we will wrap it up for today. See, our episode is even longer than the actual episode. So there's your bonus content. I want to thank all of our listeners. We really appreciate you. And I want to thank our maesters, Jesse, Shannon, and Christine, for a lot of fun, nerding out, getting into all the meaty details. We will see you again soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Keep those lances up.
There once was a man from...
We'd love to hear our listeners voice thoughts and send us feedback. Call us at 706-927-8478. Stop by our tuningintoscifitv.com blog to record a SpeakPipe message, or check the show notes and leave us comments. From the blog, you can also find links to forum discussions and subscribe to our RSS feed. Call into our Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV Skype account and leave us a message. Be social with us on our Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV Facebook page, or follow us at Tuning Into Sci-Fi on Twitter.
You've been listening to Small Council Matters from Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV, episode 123, recorded February 1st, 2026.